From sea to sea, from planet to planet, and star to shining star. From out of the night and into the light. Your frequency is ascending. With your host, Sean David Morton.
All right, you are go.
From sea to sea, from planet to planet, and star to shining star. From out of the night and into the light. From the pyramids of Giza to the pyramids on Mars. From international espionage and political intrigue to hometown shenanigans. From the black hole at the center of the galaxy to the God module at the center of your mind. Your frequency is ascending. American Freedom Radio is tickled pink, pleased as punch, and more than happy to present Strange Universe with me, your host, America's sweetheart, the Scott Farkas of Internet Radio, Sean David Morton. All right, I'm just going to get to it tonight. We got a ton of stuff going on. We have, I guarantee you, this is a program that you're going to want to record. I guarantee you, this is a program that you want to get on the archives if you're bringing them up later on. Because tonight we have the legendary Benjamin Fulford on as my guest. This is the first time we've had Benjamin on the show. And I've been a big fan of Mr. Fulford for quite some time and have been a follower of his blog ever since I was first introduced to his work by Carrie Cassidy, the lovely Carrie Cassidy, and Project Camelot. So he's coming up right after the first break, but there's all kinds of stuff we have to talk about right now, so I'm just going to get to it. On Monday, October 10th, and by the way, today is October 13th, so it's a perfect time to have Mr. Fulford on. It is Sukkoth, which is a Celtic occult holiday, if you will. It is the anniversary of the night the Templars fell, which was October 13th of 1305, I believe it was, when Jacques de Molay and the Templars were declared heretics by the kings of Spain and the kings of France, and the massive Inquisition of the Templars began. It is also, as of Monday, October 10th, was the end of the sixth night with the full moon in Aries. And now we're, on Tuesday was the beginning of the seventh day. And that seventh day, according to Dr. Carl Johan Kalaman, the author of The Mayan Factor, The Mayan Calendar, and the Transformation of Consciousness, and The Purposeful Universe, specifically talks about how the next 18 days before what he believes to be the October 18th end date of the Mayan calendar are going to be bringing about a massive series of changes, a rebalancing of the world, a veil lifting off the right-hand side of the brain that has been in place for 26,000 years, a merging, if you will, of the East and the West, which is why it's so fortuitous to actually have Mr. Fulford on the show tonight, because truly he is a person that brings Eastern quantum time philosophy, if you will, into the didactic linear world of the West. All right, this is Sean David Morton. Strange Universe, marinated in a special sauce so you can taste the difference. We'll be back with my guest, Benjamin Fulford, in a few beats of your heart.
Welcome to the world's meeting place. American.
It's practically narcotic.
Freedom.
Oh, yes, I like very much.
Radio.
You're an American institution.
American Freedom Radio.
He was educated at Sophia University in Tokyo, Japan, the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, and holds a BA in Asian Studies, where China is his area of specialty. Originally from Canada, as a teen, he spent time in the Amazon, then devoured his studies in college. He ended up living in Japan and speaks 4 languages fluently. 20 years experience as a professional writer and journalist. He's sold over 500,000 nonfiction books written in Japanese. He's produced a comprehensive catalog in fields ranging from business to Yakuza gangsters to high finance to government corruption, now focused on exposing U.S. manipulation of Japanese politics, media, and education through a combination of bribes, murder, brainwashing, etc. His goal is to counter U.S. propaganda and expose the Japanese people to the truth so that they may free themselves from the colonial yoke and use their $5 trillion in overseas holdings to end world poverty and save the environment. He has worked in Japan as a consultant for Knight Ridder, the International Financing Review, the Nihon Keizai Shimbun English edition, and the South China Morning Post, before moving to Forbes magazine, where he was the Asian bureau chief from 1998 to 2005. His investigative reports pursued scandals in the Japanese government and business world, and after leaving Forbes magazine, he wrote a series of books in Japanese, some of which became bestsellers and began to be published on the internet. In an effort to get more involved in making changes, he naturalized to Japan in 2007. As a Japanese citizen, he's now gained popularity on the internet after he's conducted interviews with the reclusive David Rockefeller in November 2007. Please welcome my guest into our strange universe, Mr. Benjamin Fulford. It is an honor to have you here, sir. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for calling me on.
So let's just open up with this. Give me the big picture. Who currently, right now, there seems to be, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, but there seems to be a war going on behind the scenes. Give me the big picture right now as to which factions and which groups are in control of where.
Okay, I think what's happening is that there is a vacuum at the very top of the international financial system. What I mean by that is that there is no agreement on the international financial treaties that govern the financial system right now. The Breton Woods mandate for United States, France, and England expired in 1994, and there's been no consensus about what to do following that. Basically, though, what you see is Europe and the United States, the G5, are controlled by a cabal of families that are, what you could call the royal families and the old banking families. The names are well known, the Rothschilds and the Warburgs, and then people like Queen Elizabeth and Queen Beatrix. And they have always controlled the issuing of money. And they had a secret group, they call it the Committee of 300 or the Bilderbergers or whatever, that would kind of direct the story that the planet went by. So they set up the Cold War as a way to boost the military industry, and they never controlled what was known as the non-aligned nations. That was a group of 77 countries, including China and India and Indonesia and Yugoslavia, that were angry that the promises made at Breton Woods were not being kept. And they set up a different system. They pooled together their gold and their treasures, and they wanted to have a Marshall Plan to develop Asia and Africa, lift them out of poverty. And they gave the rights to this gold to President Kennedy, and they asked him to carry it out, and he issued dollars that were controlled by the U.S. government, not by the privately owned Federal Reserve Board. And he was assassinated, and then President Sukarno, who was a signatory for the non-aligned nations, was driven out of office. At that point, they illegally took these bonds. This would be Kissinger, David Eisenhower, and that whole cabal in the U.S. You can get the good list of their names by looking at people who are members of the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, and the Bilderbergs. If they're on all three, then you're talking top people, okay?
Okay, yes.
But they set up these esoteric things called trading platforms. I was confused because I've been a financial journalist for a very long time, and you never hear about such things. But when I start talking to people at the BIS, who are right at the very tip top, they start talking about these things called trading platforms. And further research showed that what they are is an illegal fraud, but that's the system they've been using to take government money and put it into the private hands of oligarchs. For example, the Kennedy bonds, were supposed to be owned by the U.S. government and under control of the Congress and stuff and the Treasury Department. Instead, David Eisenhower has privately using them for secret purposes that we're not aware of. And there's been a long investigation into this issue by people who were trying to figure out what was going on ever since Kennedy was assassinated. And the general consensus is that what we're seeing, the big picture is that the fascists who lost World War II were trying to set up a fascist world government. And so this would be certain factions in Japan, in the U.S., in Italy, in England and stuff. They wanted a government controlled by them, and they very nearly pulled it off. This is what everyone refers to as the New World Order. But now I've been contacted by a different group. They say that they are the people who were responsible for 9/11. And they say they did that deliberately to try to cause a revolution in the United States, to set up the process of imploding the U.S. economy and setting the stage for revolution. And they claim that they're the same group that started the American Revolution, the French Revolution, and the Russian Revolutions, and that they're anti-aristocrats and people inheriting power. They believe in meritocracy. This is a group that's popped out recently, and they're not associated with the other groups that have contacted me before this. Now, you have to remember, again, I would remind people how I got involved in all this was simply by asking why the Japanese didn't use their own foreign exchange holdings for humanitarian purposes. And the answer I got was that because they were killing Japanese prime ministers and politicians, and the people you see in the government are just puppets for a foreign mafia. And this is a very unexpected answer I found. And then I got further involved when they sent people to try to kill me. And the result was that what I found out is that above the public structure of power that people see in the newspapers and stuff, there exists groups that have the ability to murder. That means spy agencies, that means gangsters, it means militaries, and these people who, at the end of the day, will resort to force if necessary, are a layer of government we do not see. And there's all sorts of intrigue going on now because we're trying to take control of the process of creating money away from this cabal that wants a fascist world government. And they, of course, they've been working so long and so hard on this great plan of theirs, are doing everything they can to prevent this. And in a way, it is a psychological battle as much as anything, because finance, essentially, it's a process of deciding what humanity does in the future. And a lot of us around the world, and this is especially true outside of the Western countries, are sick and tired of this cabal of, carrying out wars for no real reason except to make money. The Cold War had a lot of people fooled, and it did do a lot for the development of industry, and space race and stuff like that. But when they moved to this so-called war on terrorism, it was so obviously phony, and it was designed to put the U.S. in perpetual war over the next 30 or 40 years. Then everyone has said, why? Why are we giving money to these people? And the reason you're having a crisis now with the U.S. and the euro is that they rely on the rest of the world to finance them. They don't have enough of their own real money. And when I say real money, I mean backed by physical goods and services, things that really exist, and not just numbers they put in their computers.
Yes.
And one of the cases that they've been using to try to get to the bottom of this whole mystery and to get to this cabal has been the one in 2009 in June when 2 Japanese were detained in Italy with $134.5 billion worth of bonds.
I remember it very well when they were trying to say that the bonds look completely great, but they're fake treasury bonds, even though nobody could tell the difference.
and they weren't arrested. They had diplomatic passports. In fact, I talked to both the people who were seized, as well as I was invited by the Italian Freemason P2 Lodge to Italy to discuss this whole issue. And it was very clear that these bonds were stolen. There was no real legal activity, and they've been trying to cash them in. They took them to the Chinese Communist government. They took them to the Senate Finance Committee, and they were being followed, 24 hours a day to see what they're going to do with these bombs they stole.
Yes.
To see where the trail led to. And it led to the Davos World Forum, and then it led to the UN. The UN came out and offered us $100 million to stop this investigation. But what it turns out is that, the non-aligned nations have legal rights to $371 trillion worth of assets. Okay? That's a huge amount of money. You know, remember, world GDP is about 60 trillion a year. So we're talking about something close to 90% of humanity's savings. And when I say this, I mean this stuff is backed by gold and real assets.
Yes.
The Cabal in the West, they've created on their computers astronomical numbers. Literally, I had to use a dictionary to look up, things like quintillion and
gazillion and gazillion and bazillion.
33 more zeros than a trillion or something, and I mean, it's just not real. It's like people, bragging.
So what were they planning on doing with all this money, Benjamin? Are they trying to change the world with it? Or are they trying to bring about a shift? Are they trying to bring peace? What's going on with all this money?
Well, what they're saying is they don't want it. The people who have been using it don't have the legal rights to it. And yeah, they're saying they want to use the money for developing the planet, not to finance wars. So, for example, a huge campaign to end poverty, another one to stop environmental destruction, and then they're saying that instead of using these wars to find and all this development on arms and killing, they want it to be used for exploring the universe, building space colonies, this kind of stuff. It's about deciding what we as a species do in the future, and the people who've been running things are all religious fanaticists, who wanted to. They just didn't want to lose control, and they were literally planning to start World War III. The original plan was to start a limited war between Israel and Iran, and they gave 12 neutron bombs on missiles to Iran. Remember, these kill people but leave buildings intact. And my source for this is the cousin to the Shah of Iran and other people who say, we don't want them. They said, we don't want them. We want to give them back to you. And Obama refused to take them back. But anyway, the point was they wanted to start a war between Iran and Israel and use that to set up military wartime regime in the G7 countries, ready for full global war. And then they wanted to have a war against China. And I've seen a map. They're going to divide China into 6 countries. This was their big plan, and it started unraveling when the Chinese stopped paying the bills. And they said, hey, we're not going to spend our dollars on something that's designed to kill us. And that's what started this big financial war that has been going on behind the scenes. And right now, it's reached the point where I've heard that the people in the CIA and the Pentagon and the other agencies are ready to take action against the financial cabal.
Okay, and actually that's where we're going to leave it until we come into the next break, because you made some statements in November about the White Dragon Society and about them being versus the 1,000 members of the New World Order. We're going to get back to my legendary guest, Benjamin Fulford. This is Sean David Morton. It's a Strange Universe, and we just work here. We'll be back in a few beats of your heart. breezing tonight. Hardly breezing. We're actually at the precipice of destruction, apparently. So, but George Benson always makes everybody feel better. Benjamin Fulford, again, is my legendary guest this evening. I wanted to say thank you so much for him being here with me. Welcome back to it. It's a strange universe, and we just work here, and it's good to have you. And with me, your host, America's sweetheart, the man who, when aliens abduct me, they ask me to probe them. Sean David Morton here, back with Ben Fulford. Ben, I would be remiss. Let me ask you a couple of rapid-fire questions here, because I'm not sure how long I have you for here. So I have a lot of people asking me about the Iraqi dinar #1. Any opinions on it? A lot of people have it. A lot of people think it may revalue. Other people think it's a total hoax. Can you give me a quick shot or a quick idea as to what you think of it?
All right. What I understand is that when the Bush-Clinton mafia invaded Iraq, they bought all the dinars at pennies to the dollar, and then they've been selling them to make money. It's basically, and people do not want the Bushes to profit from this crime. However, at the end of the day, the Bush money will be frozen, and the Clinton money and all that stuff, the Obama money, all this stuff that was stolen by these gangsters who took over your government, your constitutional government. But I think that it might. This is something where no decision has been made yet. But
yes,
if people, if the fat cats, the people who actually stole the dinars from the Iraqi people, have their funds frozen, then the small investors who have them now, some way may be found to help them out, But this is something where no decision has been made at this point.
Okay, so now, then that leads me into my next question. My next question being is that having kept up on your posts and your blog and, again, having been a fan and following your work, you made a very prescient prediction back in, I believe it was December of last year. And you predicted, for all intents and purposes, a little bit early, but, close enough for horseshoes and hand grenades, that there would be some kind of reprisals in the form of induced earthquakes against the country of Japan. The reason you gave for this, and please correct me if I am incorrect, was that there's basically about 1,000 members of this cabal. I guess if you talk about the Bilderberger, CFR, Trilateral, or what some people have called the Incunabula, this inner core of people, there's about 1,000 of them. And you have said that there is a group called the White Dragon Society that apparently relates back to the old Taoists, apparently, and that this White Dragon Society has said that there will be a night of the long knives coming, if you will, that within 48 hours they could basically wipe out all of these major world leaders, and that this threat was about ready to be carried out. And you were saying that then a reprisal would take place against Japan, which many people interpreted as being the massive Japanese earthquake of March 11th.
Yeah, okay. First of all, the original discussion I had with these people was, if you could take these people out, that might solve the problem. And
yes,
they figured they could take out about 200 people simultaneously. That's what they had. Yeah, but they realized that we're dealing with people who are looking for an excuse to start World War III, and they realized that would not have the consequences that they intended or they desired. They would be replaced with other Cabalists, and they would get this war they were wishing for. So a decision was made not to go ahead with something like that. Instead, they chose a longer route, which was a legal one, which is basically to try to get at them through the legal system and also cut off their funds and blacklist them. And that's what's been going on. And I think now they only control about 30 countries when they used to control, the whole world or most of it. They're really down to a rump now. And because the real funds are being cut off to them, you can see that the consequences with the euro falling apart. The reason the euro is falling apart is because they're no longer getting money from outside of Europe to prop up these, Mediterranean countries that had, chronic deficits.
Yes.
In other words, they were using their card more than they could afford to pay.
Right. And you've also, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you've also said that many of these people are talking about fleeing and going to South America, or that there's some deus ex machina that's supposed to come from the sky and put all these people in jail. Who is this supposed to be?
Well, I've been talking to people within the agencies in the U.S., CIA, NSA, and Pentagon, and they're saying that, okay, they will move and arrest these people, but they haven't been doing it yet. They keep saying that they're waiting for a certain lawsuit to act as a trigger mechanism, and that lawsuit involves the $371 trillion they stole from the non-allied nations, right?
Okay.
So they've been trying to block it all sorts of ways, but what I'm hearing now is that it could go ahead in November. But even if it doesn't go ahead, what's happened is that by not giving up control of the U.S. dollar, they are pushing the U.S. economy into a disastrous tailspin. Because when the U.S. dollar was accepted as an international currency at the end of World War II, and it didn't become truly international until 1968, the United States was 50% of the world's economy. Now it's down to 17 or 16% of the world's economy. And
yes,
most of the dollars out there are not owned by Americans. They're owned by Chinese or Nigerians or Saudis.
Yes.
And when the Americans wanted to, the Cabal and the Federal Reserve Board Cabal wanted to devalue the dollars and put out the AMRO, all the other countries said, no, we earned these dollars, and we're not just going to let you welch on it, and we don't want them to become worthless. And so after 2008, they stopped accepting new dollars from the United States group.
Okay.
And this is something that it was not reported in your media, although you can prove it. That's what the Lehman shock was about. They're saying, hey, we don't accept it anymore. But there's a split. There's places where they will accept these dollars, and there's places where they will not. I had a friend who came here with a bunch of $100 bills, and he went to the banks, and then they wouldn't change them. He just come from the U.S., but they say, no, we can't accept these bills. They don't have the right serial numbers.
That seems odd. And I did read that in one of your posts as well. Are you on board? Because, again, an outrageous statement was made, which I sort of agree with, that it seems like the two, let's call it white hat or black hat. I'm not sure who the good guys are anymore, the Cowboys or the Indians. It seems like the Indians are the good guys, the Cowboys are the bad guys. But that it seems like the two forces for good right now seem to be the Russians under Vladimir Putin, because Putin is about ready to run for president again, and currently the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which are now being run by Admiral Fox Fallon, and Admiral Fallon was the one that basically took over what was called Tyrant, which is the Iranian Near Theater, and he was the one that stopped personally 6 different false flag events that I counted anyway, of Dick Cheney and George Bush trying to get a war with the Iranians, trying to do anything they could to trick up that war. And at the same time, it seems that the military, specifically something called Alice in the Sky, also stepped in between actually late September of 2008 to also stop a series of massive false flag operations inside the United States. Would you agree that now the Pentagon and Fox Fallon and now the Russians are sort of the white knights operating for our benefit behind the scenes?
Yeah, and believe it or not, even like the most of the CIA is now with this. You have to understand that there's always been 2 CIAs. I mean, the CIA was created when they merged the Gestapo and the OSS after World War II, and the Nazi faction is the one that does all the drug dealing, and it's headed by George Bush. And the other faction is patriots who work on government salaries, don't make their money from drugs, Right. And that group is helping us too. And there's what they're realizing is it's taking a long time because they want to go through this legally. But what they're saying is there's a legal way to remove these people from power. But when they've investigated, they found that most members of Congress had accounts in the Vatican Bank with huge bribes in them. And so cleaning this mess up would involve changing almost every politician in Washington to do it right.
Go ahead.
And the other thing is that the military doesn't want to be seen as the bad guys, right? And so they're not, for example, going to intervene in these protests and stuff going on right now, but they only intervene when people are actually killing each other. Then they'll come in to make the peace, but not until that time. And, we're close to the end game. But the other thing they've realized is that a lot of the debt the U.S. has, they don't have to pay, okay? A lot of the U.S. government debt was created through fraud. And you can just say, hey, like the Irish government, you don't hear about Ireland anymore, right?
No, you don't. You used to hear about the Celtic Tiger, and now they're just all gone.
Well, the Irish Prime Minister has gone to these bankers and said, well, you got your right to this debt that you say you created through fraud. We don't have a legal obligation to pay it.
Benjamin, here comes. Can you stay with me after the break, or do you have to go?
After one more break, then I've got to meet somebody. So one more session.
Okay, we're going to be back after the break with Benjamin Fulford. We're going to talk about the end game with Mr. Fulford. This is Sean David Morton, the 5-star general of Generation Y, the admiral on the oceans of truth and justice. It's a strange universe, and we'll be back in a few beats of your heart. See from planet to planet and star to shining star, from out of the night and into the light, from the pyramids of Giza to the pyramids on Mars, from the G to the O to the D, the generator, operator, destroyer of the light-encoded reality matrix. We're here to save the soul, the survival of universal life, the radio show hated and reviled by Sarah Palin, the Kardashians, Paris Hilton, and Snooki. Please fasten your safety belts on your souls. Put your tray tables up into your frontal lobes and keep your arms and legs inside the radio at all times. Ding! You're free to move about this strange universe with me, your host, America's sweetheart, Sean David Morton. My guest this evening, the legendary Benjamin Fulford. Benjamin, I certainly hope, as I said, I've been a fan and a follower of yours for a long time, since your stunning interviews on Project Camelot with our good friend Carrie Cassidy. I certainly hope you'll be a regular contributor to the show, and I can have you back a lot. Can we do that?
Yeah, maybe when there's stuff to report, maybe around once a month should be okay.
All right. Whenever you have something, whenever you have something going on, we'll get a hold of you and feel free to call. So here's my question, because we've only got you for about 10 minutes here. If you were writing, if you were writing the movie about the end game of the final conflict here between, on the one hand, it seems we have an evolutionary spiral where mankind is very much yearning to be free. You seem to believe that there is a large group of people with a large bunch of money, or should I say a small group, the White Dragons or whomever, that seem to be working behind the scenes for the good of the world rather than to enslave us. What's the end game here? How does your version of the apocalypse, where that which is hidden becomes revealed, play out, where the good guys win in the end?
All right, well, first of all, we know their version. They want to start a war, kill 4 or 5 billion of what they call useless eaters, enslave the rest, and set themselves up in a Shangri-La for the elite, and everybody else is their slave in a dictatorial world government. Now, what the end game we see is that, finance ultimately is the process of deciding what we as a species do in the future, and it's being controlled by some not very nice people, basically gangsters. So if humans say, from now on, we're going to decide what we're going to do in the future, then a few obvious things come to mind that people would want to do. And one is they want to stop the destruction of the environment. And I don't mean, this global warming fraud. I'm talking about destroying ecosystems and wiping out species. They would want to end poverty. And then the other thing is that according to the American Association of Scientists, there's more than 6,000 patents that have been suppressed. We want to take this technology, anything that's safe, and bring it out to the people. And I believe that once we get control of the future away from this group, first of all, our group supports meritocracy. That's something where anybody can climb to the top of the pyramid if they really work at it and they're good enough. It's not going to be something that you're born into and everybody else is your sheep, which is a system that exists now. I also believe, I personally believe we should have some kind of end of the world type event, but I don't mean World War III. I mean like a big party type of thing. And then maybe you could reset the calendar to the year 0 or something, something really big to let people know that things are different now. I mean, it's like a wedding ceremony or a coming-of-age ceremony. Everybody knows after it's different. And we'd like to have some kind of huge global party to inaugurate the new and freedom for the people. But I've been reading science magazines for decades, and they I keep reading things about technology that allow people to live longer, like 200 years, 300 years, and more. And then they keep saying, well, but it's not going to be financed. And so why not? Why can't we live longer if we have the technology? And I think that there's going to be a lot of research and things like that. And all this. So I believe that we have a really fabulous future waiting for us. But it's not going to happen right away because these guys are not going to go quietly into the night. They're trying to drag the whole U.S. down with them. And they've been trying to create disasters. For a while they were trying to set off the Canary Islands on big earthquakes. That would have caused a 500-foot tidal wave to hit the U.S. East Coast.
Are you talking about blowing up Las Palmas, which is the island of the Canary Islands? They
were threatening that, and I think that's been stopped now. But what I'm saying is these guys are going to do everything they can, but the good news is they don't have the money and they don't have the support of most of the world now. Even within the U.S., the people who count don't support them anymore. They needed secrecy to keep their system going, and they don't have that secrecy anymore. People now know that they have these computers where they type in $1 trillion and let them play God. That's not their money. That belongs to the people. And their people are going to take it back. This is the process that's happening. So, we expect some, world peace, for example, would be a no-brainer. And then really extended development of the universe. And then, of course, we all want to know the truth. Okay? There's some... Clearly, I don't get into UFOs and stuff like this. I'm deliberately trying to stick to the daily nitty-gritty of the actual financial system and then the international treaties. But we do know that people were going out into space. There was Apollo flights, and then the talk was that we're going to be having colonies on Mars, and everything just stopped dead in the 1970s. And then you have all these underground bases and all these crazy stories coming out of them. I think we want to have those bases open. We want to have the news cameras go in there and find out exactly what is really going on and what is just a huge cloud of disinformation. Speaking of disinformation, you were quoting earlier in your show a Sorcha Fowl, okay?
Yes.
My research has shown that this is actually written by a person by the name of David Booth, naval military intelligence.
Yes.
And so it is a valuable site because it's naval military intelligence putting it out. But it ranges anywhere from 10 to 90% true. So you have to be careful when you read it and try to figure out what is probably real and what's not in their reports.
You're absolutely right, Benjamin. And I did try to preface it. I didn't have a lot of time before I brought you on, but I tried to preface it with that Sorcha Fall is one of those sources that people need to take with a giant lick of salt. Because, again, it seems to be one of those kind of radical sources that sometimes seems to be true, sometimes does not. I know there were other intelligences coming out of the about the Middle East that specifically were Israeli intelligence and Mossad intelligence about certain weapons that they had and whatever else. But that's what we have to look out for all the way around it. It does seem, though, that there's going to be a considerable amount of pain, woe, and sorrow, if you will, as the social and political economic structure begins to collapse. I mean, we're looking at the collapse of Greece. If Greece goes, France goes, because France is financing most of what's happening in Greece. It took 20 years for a central European bank concept with the euro to basically bankrupt the European nations. It took 20 years for the Federal Reserve System to bankrupt the United States of America, which means they're just I can't believe the Europeans, quite frankly, were so stupid to fall for it. And now, go ahead.
It's like having a joint account with a a cousin who doesn't really work very hard and spends more than he puts in, and at a certain point saying, why do I have a joint account with this guy? And that's the essence of it. But what's really happening is what you're seeing is the system that was controlled by the old cabal is falling apart because they're being systematically cut off. That's what you don't see. For example, we have our guy in the BIS working with us, and they've tried twice to kill him, because he's actually one of the persons actually in control of the computer screen that's blocking their money from getting into the system,
Yes.
And it's really down to that level now. It's very few people are in on the secret of what codes you type in to create money and put money into the banking system in the first place. And in some ways, it needs to be kept secret, but it was stolen by people who didn't have the rights to it. That's the issue we're dealing with at that level. But they won't want to give up power, so they're going to have more chaos before they finally accept the inevitable that their system's control is no longer viable and that humanity will be free.
Do you think humanity, and from you personally, you have a lot of concepts and grand ideas and all this. You personally, do you think that humanity is prepared to be free? Do you think they actually have the knowledge and the wisdom and the responsibility? Because apparently that's what they're taking advantage of, that these masters of the universe are in essence... they understand that very few people want to be creditors and want to be responsible, that so many people just want to be slaves and want to be told what to do. Are we ready to be free, Benjamin?
Well, a lot of people will remain, look, a lot of people, you know this, they're not going to change until what they see on the network TV changes, okay? When it's announced to them that it's going to be different, then they'll go along with that. And there will always be people who just will act like sheep. And that's unfortunate. But what you can do is if you educate people, give them the truth, people generally make good decisions when they have good information. And I think you can trust them as long as you take them out of their ignorance. But, that's why I say the democracy was subverted because they took over the control of the media and the banking and the money. And so what they did is they systematically took over your democratic system through bribery, murder, and propaganda until it became a hidden fascist system controlled by members of a similar ethnic group. And I'm not talking about Jews here. I'm talking about Central Asian Khazars. And their belief system is not Jewish, okay?
Yes.
But they're the same group as the Ashkenazi Druze, the same ancestry. But I don't want to get that issue confused because they're separate.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And actually,
1 million of those guys.
And actually, they're part Mongol. Actually, because of Genghis Khan and the Mongol invasion. But go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, and I'm still hearing they're going to be deported from the U.S. when people find out what they've been doing. They're not going to be welcome anymore. And some people want to put them in the FEMA camps. Some people say ship them to North Korea. I don't know what's going to happen. This is going to be something that the American people are going to have to decide. But there's going to be a lot of angry people out there when they find out what's being done to them by this group. How they subverted your democracy and turned you into a fascist, warmongering nation. And the other thing is that what we need to do, too, is that once the U.S. debt is written off and we reestablish a financial system, the Americans need to come up with their own currency. The U.S. dollar is not an American thing. It was never controlled by Americans since the Federal Reserve Board was taken over by foreigners. And it's an international trading currency. And the interests of that are different from the interests of the United States as a country. And that's something that they need to wrap their heads around. They can't think away from that, but they have to come up with a new currency for the United States, separate from all the dollars that have been issued since, up until 2008. And then those other currencies that are out there, those dollars that were owned by the world, will be backed by gold, and they'll become world dollars. And we need to have some kind of, we have to rebuild the institutions that were built after World War II. It means everything has to be changed. The UN, the BIS, the IMF, the World Bank. We need a total revamp of the international architecture to make it more democratic and representative of the actual people on the planet, and to take it out of the control of a corrupt mafia that has infiltrated the very top ranks.
And who do you see this as being? Again, if George Soros is the hope for humanity, I don't think we have much hope.
No, George Soros is in trouble. He's not going to be around much longer. I mean, they're going to take him out of commission. I don't mean killing him. I mean they're going to put him in jail or something or take his money away. But he's been trying to take over this protest movement, as you know. They're all trying to co-opt it. But they don't have the support of the people who control the military and the agencies. They're losing that. And at a certain point, the media monopoly is going to break up. I'm hearing that Rupert Murdoch is ready to change sides. I know he's been under a lot of attack. And part of the reason he's under attack is because he may be ready to break with the media control network or grid and start providing some truth. I'm hoping he will, but he's waiting. He's waiting to see the military act before he does that. So we'll see. If there's a bunch of arrests before the end of the year, that'll be a sign for everybody to see. Otherwise, you'll see more, the infighting and people, spilling secrets on each other. It's like rats in a sack turning on each other. And you'll see more of this, and information that's been hidden for a long time will come out. But just be careful. These guys are the world's best liars. They put out smog and disinformation, and just stay away from anything that doesn't have solid proof. And they can't fool you. And just remember, they don't have money anymore. All they have is illusion, and that illusion is breaking up.
Okay,
and
so what
is happening again? At the end of the day, what's going to happen is humanity is going to take over the process of deciding what they want to do next in the future from a small inbred elite. And that's going to be bigger than the fall of the Soviet Union. It's going to be the biggest thing probably in thousands of years in our history. That's how big it's going to be. I can't even... The implications are just so mind-boggling. But we're going to have the opportunity to live for thousands of years. We're going to have all this SF technology that's been hidden from us. Free energy will allow us to live like rich people. This is all going to be realistically possible within our lifetimes once we get rid of these control freak monsters who took over the top of the Western system.
And I guess last but not least, again, you've created a lot of controversy. The August 23rd earthquakes, part of which I predicted, actually. I said that there was going to be an alignment, and within 5 days of August 18th that we were going to see something on the Appalachian Plains and in the Appalachian quake. You believe that these are this war being extended to underground bases and facilities being cleared out? Explain a little bit of that before we have to go.
Okay, what I heard from my direct sources, not stuff I read on the internet, was that there were 2 missiles in the underground system that were going to be used to set off some kind of terrorist event in New York and Washington, and instead they were taken to the safe part of the underground system. They were blown up where they wouldn't cause much human or material damage, but I heard a lot of their warehouses, their stashes were blown up. And then to confirm it, there was the seismographic evidence showing that it was an underground explosion, not an earthquake, and the epicenter coincided with known underground bases.
Benjamin Fulford, thank you so much. I hope you're a regular contributor to the show. I respect your time, and I understand that you have to go. Thank you. Can you come back?
If something important happens, I'll contact you. But when there's no news, there's no news.
Under the headline of Satanic Cabal threatens to make San Francisco and Damascus uninhabitable. One of the reasons I was talking to Benjamin Fulford today is that on September 6th, he had an interesting post that talked about a criminal cabal that has seized power in the G5 countries, has reacted with new threats of mass terror to the concerted efforts by the nations and people of the world to remove them from power. The latest threat made by phone to a White Dragon Society member by some people who hid their identity was that San Francisco and Damascus would be made uninhabitable. In reaction to this, a source contacted the White Dragon Society and promised that the entire extended families of any ruling bloodline found to be participating in genocide would be hunted down and exterminated down to the last individual. The source was not affiliated with the White Dragon Society, but they made it clear that this threat was to be taken, quote, very seriously. Okay, well, I've got some other things to read here. Some various posts by Benjamin Fulford. We got him sort of at the last minute. Let's talk about it. What do you guys think? What are your ideas politically, economically, socially? What are my Strange University regulars? 402 AFR 2525, 402 AFR 2525, 402 237 2525. Give your Uncle Sean a call. So we heard from the man himself. He had to go. He had a meeting. He was actually a very kind. He's actually calling us from the future. It's 12:24 p.m. his time, actually, where he is in Japan. And very interesting. Again, it's the first time I've actually had a chance to talk to him. As I said, I was a fan, certainly interested in him from the very first courageous interviews that were done with Kerry Cassidy and Bill Ryan on Project Camelot. Very, very interesting stuff. And there he is. What do you think? What's your opinion? 402-237-2525. Again, on the one hand, I would love to believe all this. I would love to eat it up like a big bowl of ice cream being fed to the USC football team when they win the turnover margin in a game, because Coach Lane Kiffin gives them ice cream if they get more turnovers than the other team. I think we're going to be waiting a long time. All right, you know him, you love him, you fear him. It's my buddy, the Greek, calling in. What's up, Greek?
Hey, greetings, Sean.
How are you, man? What's your...
Hey, doing good, man. It's the first time I'm calling your show.
Thank you very much.
Great, excellent topic. I want to cut to the chase and basically say what I've been saying for many years now.
Please.
About the current economic, political, geoeconomic, let's put it that way, and actually the sentiment in people's minds, this unrest. I've been speaking about what's going on many years before it came, and I'm not psychic, by the way.
By the way, as many of us have been, we're in that shadow minority, if you will, that have been screaming with our hair on fire from the rooftops for quite some time that everything that's about to happen was going to come down. So again, you didn't have to be psychic, you didn't have to be a prophet. All you had to do is know that if you do ABC, XYZ logically follows.
Well, I could give you specifics. Like I said earlier, I want to cut to the chase. What you actually are seeing in all this unrest, believe it or not, is the precursor to the formation of what some might call a Middle East Union. It's similar to the EU, but unlike the EU. It'll be about 10 countries in the Middle East. And you're going to have the Western world playing second fiddle to this new union. And like I say, when I say the EU, a lot of people are not don't acknowledge that the actual economy, well, all things aside as they are today, the EU is slightly larger than the American economy. It was actually one of the largest economies in the world. So you're going to see
it's about 16 trillion actually. The US economy is about 15 trillion and all of Europe put together is about $16 trillion.
Right. So yeah, even the euro at the exchange rate. So what you're seeing now is the precursor of a Middle East union forming. It's not going to be a tight union like you see in Europe. Now, and I'm saying this is for people who have eyes and ears, as they say, and also I know the show's being recorded, and it's not like I get off on listening to this after it happens or anything. I just want to put this out so people can hear this. And here's another thing. Whenever you take in any information, it can't be counterintuitive. In other words, everyone has enough intuition to rationalize information. Well, let's say everyone put aside, but most people. Here, let me give you another example. Iraq is going to be split into two countries, okay? You're going to have the northern part, which is going to be the newest Syria, and the southern part, which could be the Babylon, remain called Iraq. And this is the logic behind it. And this is actually information that's all in what you call the scriptures, right? But this is the rational aspect of it. Every time the U.S. goes into a country, it went into Colombia and split it, created Panama. Germany, east-west. Korea north-south, Vietnam north-south. It's going to split Iraq. Even though it went in twice, it didn't do it the first time, it's going to do it this time. And all this stuff I'm talking about won't be rolling around, at least for the next decade. You're going to have Jordan divided into 3 different countries. There's so many things, and this is, when you tell people you're getting this out of like biblical prophecy, they're like, wow, I'm not religious or anything like that. But here's the point: Sean, if you and I wrote a book that's about 700 or 800 pages long, we sent it to the printer, and the printer calls us up and he says you have about 10 mistakes. What do you want to do? Well, we want to correct it. Well, I've cataloged over 6,800 mistakes in all of the English translations of the Bible. Now, and your first one starts in Genesis 1, verse 1. And in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It's 10 words. In the original Hebrew, there's 7. So you're going to say they added 3. No, they actually added 4 because they took away 1.
I cut to the chase. Don't give me a Bible lesson here. And by the way, the United States did not divide North and South Vietnam. We went in. I mean, technically, that could have been the French that you're talking about. I am not. And yes, you're right. Probably the Balkanization.
The political
well, hold on. I talk, then you talk. That's how we do radio. That the Balkanization of Iraq will probably occur if they create another like Kurdish nation state. And again, and we don't have that much time because there's a whole list of callers here. But my challenge to that would be part of what it seems to be the mission of the United States military now is not to win wars or conflicts, but to create chaos, to stop the kind of coalitions that you are talking about from actually coming together, to create the sort of chaos, certainly with the fall of Mubarak, now with the engineered fall of Gaddafi, because come on, that's 50,000 U.S. and Israeli Mossad and other guy mercenaries that were in place about a year before. The guy who's leading the revolt lived about 5 minutes away from CIA headquarters. Gaddafi wanted to buy British petroleum last year. He just completed the Great Man-Made Lakes project, which means that Libya now has more fresh water than any other country. And for the last 3 years, I've been saying that Libya was going to be the fallback position for the United States when we began to withdraw from Iraq and Afghanistan, and Gaddafi just basically got in their way. So again, it seems like the antithesis of what you're talking about, where the United States, all we need to do is go in and basically just take a dump, again, be the Scott Farkas, if you will, beating the crap out of everybody in the alley, mugging kids for their lunch money. And again, is the United States going to go broke? Probably not, because we're going to go beat somebody up and take their stuff and loot their country like all good Babylonian interest-based banking countries do. So give me a quick response to that, because then we got to move on to other calls. Go ahead.
Okay, the definition of broke can be very broad. Like broke could be like your car runs out of gas and you're off the side of the road, or broke is that it's a credit-based economy and there's no money anyway, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
of course.
The thing is, once the people's perception of what they're getting is not viable, then they're going to stop. All the machines will stop grinding. So that, in other words, it's like you're running your your car on virtual gasoline, and once your concept of this virtual gasoline disappears, then the car stops running. That's basically the world economy, right? Well, anyway, listen. Thanks for the time, and maybe I'll talk to you again. Thanks very much.
Thank you, buddy. Call in anytime. Thank you very much. All right, we've also got Michael on the line calling in. Once again, please join in on the conversation, 402-AFR-2525. We just had the fascinating Benjamin Fulford on. Very controversial character, says a lot of very interesting things, a lot of hopeful things, a lot of, kind of dark things, but interesting and fascinating nonetheless. We hope to have him as one of our Strange University regulars. We're talking to Michael. What's up, Michael?
Hey, how are you? Great show. Great guest and everything.
I'm good. What's your opinion?
I just want to make a quick note. The reason why Bible prophecies are probably coming true is because people that manipulated the Word of God are following through with that plan.
Oh, wait. Okay, I got to call shenanigans on that a little bit. Wait, you're saying that prophecy is coming true because people are, manipulating events to make the prophecy come true? So the prophecy is self-fulfilling because...
All the people that...
you got to explain part of that statement to me, Michael, because that's...
The people that manipulated it. Well, the people that manipulated the Word, the Bible, right?
Yes.
The people that go back, they obviously put some things in there to manipulate it. So therefore, the people that are now in control are probably following through, are probably the same sort of, same money changing aspects of it. The money saying the bloodlines and all that.
You're talking about the Jews. Say the Jews. I don't know why people...
No. This goes out beyond...
Say it together.
This goes out beyond all things. I don't believe hate has a...
I'm not saying that, but I notice everybody has these little code words, and everybody has, this and that and the other. And again, I completely agree with Benjamin that we're talking about the Khazars and the Khazarians who later became the Cossacks, and people do not understand their history. That this section of Eastern Europe, which was occupied by Genghis Khan and the Mongol horde, and they stayed for several months. They actually stopped at the Black Forest of Austria at this line of demarcation between East and West. And they basically hung out for about 3 months or so, raped everything they could get their hands on, because the Mongolians liked rape a lot. And then they just packed up and went home and left a race of people there that were very much mixed with the Mongolians and became known as the Khazars. And the Khazars then, about the 8th century or so, stuck between Christian Russia and Christian Europe and Islam to the south, basically converted en masse in the 8th century to Judaism. Which is why you get all these people of Eastern. Which is why, come on, the Jews did not wander around in the desert in those big heavy coats with the, with the big giant Russian hats and all these Hasidic Jews and all that. They're from the Khazarians, and again. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just simply saying that I was agreeing with that, and the fact I'm not saying it's one of those Jew world order type of scenarios, but I think the bloodlines and the money is still pretty much falling into the same hands generation after generation.
Well, I think when you get to the point where you're that rich and you're that evil, the Bushes are Episcopalians. The Rockefellers are, I think, Episcopalians as well. Somebody else is like Baptist. You have Sung Mung Moon, who owns all kinds of stuff in the United States, and he owns the Ramada Inns, and heck, the girl I took to junior prom got taken away by the frickin' Moonies, and her mother was trying to get me to go in with guns blazing and rescue her and her sister from this Moonie cult, where she married some Korean guy that didn't speak any English in some big mass ceremony in Yankee Stadium. If that's not mind control and slavery, I don't know what is. And of course, it happened at Yankee Stadium, which I think is, once again, depending on if you're a Red Sox fan or something, it's the pit of evil, or it's where the angels live, or whatever you want to call it. So you think that prophecy is being manipulated? Do you think that there's
well, I think there are people that were very intelligent looked at it and, hey, how do we make this happen and work for us? Just pretty much like the birth and understanding of fire. How can we use this against us? Against to our will, so we can use it against them. So I think since that time, the people that basically are in control have been in control, and we've never been in technically. Maybe if we had some power, it probably lasted for no more than 2 hours at a time, But I think it is coming to a head, because you do see an escalation and people just going absolutely crazy. People that are so-called waking up at a massive level. People that are doing more intelligent research now. People that are reaching out more now and expanding more now, because I think the Earth is as well. And I think it's all related because we are on this planet.
Well, amen. As I say, God is good all the time. Michael, thank you so much for coming in. Thanks for being part of our strange universe. All right, calling from the where is the 816? Calling from the 816. This is Sean.
Hi, Kansas City, Missouri area.
Hi, who's this? What's your name?
Nancy.
Hi, Nancy. What's on your mind, Miss Nancy?
I love your show. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you. Strange Universe loves you too. Thanks for being here, Nancy. What's on your mind? What do you think? What do you? Are we coming to a head, or is the world going to end? Are we in the apocalypse? What's your take on it?
Well, actually, I wanted your opinion on that. I have followed Benjamin Fulford. I've followed Benjamin Fulford. And sometimes he's even tied to some things about David Wilcock. They've been talking about what's going on in the underground bases, and also Carl Kalaman, who you're friends with, and also your Buddhist training about the veil being lifted.
David's kind of jumped on Ben Fulford's wagon and has just printed a bunch of stuff on his. Nancy, do this. You want to hang on for just 1 second? Can you hold on, lovely lady?
Sure.
Okay, I hate to keep a lady waiting, but we've got some bills to pay, as they say. This is Sean David Morton. Again, the only person that Chuck Norris has ever apologized to, the only guy who knows what Willis is talking about. It's a strange universe, and we just work here. We'll be back. Hold your breath. Putting the scary back into food storage. Have you tasted powdered butter? unafraid to click the Berkey banner, marinated for weeks in a special secret sauce so you can taste the difference. It's like watching lesbian porn. You never quite know when it's over, bringing you the pinnacle of 16.4 billion years of evolution. With great power comes the ability to pretty much do anything you want. I am America's sweetheart, the 5-star general of Generation Y, the admiral on the oceans of truth and justice. If you have a complaint about the show, please call 1-800-NETFLIX. And our human resources director, Mr. Haywood Jablomi. All right, we're the Glass Plus for the windows of your soul. Sean David Morton on Strange Universe. I'm hoping she's still there. We've still got the lovely Miss Naughty Nancy online. Are you there, Nancy?
I am here. I've been very good, though.
Oh, okay. I didn't mean to cast aspersions on your character. I'm very sorry. So again, you're a Benjamin Fulford fan, and of course a Strange Universe fan, of course, and all those other radio shows that don't matter. This is the only one that does. So what do you think? Where do you think it's going? You're out. Where do you live, Nancy? You're out in the middle of the country, right?
In the Kansas City, Missouri area.
See, you're right there, Kansas City, Missouri. It's great. It's hey, go Rams! You stole our football team, darn you! So we didn't want them anyway. They were kind of crappy. So what do you think? You're in the Midwest. You're in the heartland.
I've lived in the Midwest my entire life, and what I see, and this is kind of what I wanted your opinion on with your enormous background of study. 16.4 million years, Carl Kalaman coming into this new wave. You had your friend, the shaman on the other day about his vision of the light on the 28th. And then we've got people who are more on the pragmatic, dealing with the very 3D systems that we have in place in this reality, which would seem to be more of a view with that veil down over the right side, like Benjamin Fulford, and I guess that partly leads into that idea of if you're trying to solve a problem with the same minds that have created that problem, you don't get very far. So my question to you is, if we're coming up on a time of a leap in consciousness, and we're trying to look at all of these enormous problems in our world, but we are still looking at them from, let's say, a very 3D consciousness model. So you studied with the Buddhists, you met the Dalai Lama, you're friends with Carl Kalaman, you know people in the esoteric world, people in Hollywood, people that are very, in that 3D world. Where do you see this going as far as consciousness? And are we looking at these two different strains?
Wow. Okay. Great question. Thanks for asking it. Let's put it, and you're absolutely right. Let's try to put it all together. From Dr. Carl Kalaman's viewpoint, he talks about that each one of these underworlds, as he calls them, are basically, each one is an evolutionary pulse wave, if you will. And he is right, the calendar does come, and nobody is arguing about this, that the calendar on October 28th comes to 13, 13, 13, 13, 13, Ahu, Baktan, all of these, it's like 13.13.13 on October 28th. On Monday, we had the full moon in Aries, and with the full moon in Aries, we also ended the 6th night. So Dr. Kalaman is talking about that on the 7th day, where we're at now, that there is supposed to be a readjustment. But the challenge is when you readjust anything is if you watch a set of scales, as any good Libra does. Are you a Libra? What's your sun sign, Nancy?
Pisces. I'm a leap year Pisces. And a leap year Pisces.
the perfect woman. Oh, you're born on February 29th?
Yes.
Wow. So you're not only the perfect woman because you're a Pisces, but you're also only 10 years old. So, because you
11.
Celebrate your birthday,
Actually,
11 years old. Yeah, 11 years old, which means I cannot see you because you're underage. When you get to be 18, give me a call.
That's right. Even this language is inappropriate to be talking to an 11-year-old.
We're joking now. She's not really 11. She's got a birthday every 4 years. So that's the story. So you've got these 9 mega wave pulses, if you will. And I think what Carl's talking about is that, and again, we were on a ship to Mexico with Carl when he was talking about the beginning of the 9th wave, and lo and behold, we had all these Japanese folks whose lives we saved, by the way, by coming on our tour. And we made the news because we were the only two boats at sea when the tsunami sort of rolled under us, if you will. Of course, that's the safest place to be. But, he called it right then as to when these things, and he's been immensely accurate, especially his predictions of the fifth night and his predictions of the collapse of the economic system. So, I wouldn't bet against him, as they say. And yet, there are so many interesting astrological and astronomical alignments that are going on. There's the May 20th eclipse up in Mount Shasta. We're going to have a big conference there. We've got the 11-11-11 coming up, which is the full moon on November 10th into the 11th, and we're going to have a whole trip to the Yucatan and actually be celebrating that with Mayan elders down there in the Yucatan. So anybody who wants to come, please, MayanStargate.com. And then you've got the May 20th eclipse. First time in 26,000 years, you have the sun, the moon, and the Pleiades all lining up in a straight line. 16 days after that, you have the next Venus transit, which then seals the energy of, lifting the veil on the right-hand side of the brain. That doesn't happen again for another 171 years. But also, and people may have missed this in all these diatribes, also, November 13th, 14th, 15th of next month, less than a month away, you have a whole series of mathematical equations of Fibonacci curves and waves about the economy based on the time wave zero software, what's called the Shellyak graph, the Kelly graph, the Wooing T graph, which is a Chinese graph on all this, all showing that there's this massive novelty spike of a collapse of some kind. And by the way, those all correlate completely independently to Cliff High and his half-past human WebBot program, which are now correlating with a guy out of Illinois who used the same kind of WebBot program to then predict the collapse of the various governments in the Middle East. All of these things come to this massive spike wave somewhere around, let's call it the 15th of November of next month. Terrence McKenna, who was a good friend of mine for many years, and we used to go visit him at his house over in Half Moon Bay. He lived over the hill from us before he moved to Hawaii. My mother used to say, do not eat the desserts at Terrence's house because his hair was on fire and his eyes were, lightning was coming out of his eyes and all other fingers of his body, and because he was lit up on shrooms most of the time. But he talked about this time wave zero software where he took the I Ching and ran it through a computer, and it all came out in these Fibonacci wave sequences. And long story short, I did an interview with him way back in the day, back in 1991, where he talked about December 3rd. This is coming up in 2 months now. December 3rd of 2011 was going to be the final tipping point for civilization that would then shove us into that next, literally grab us by the scruff of the neck, kick us in the pants, and sort of throw us out of the bar into the street, so to speak, where we can't continue to just imbibe on all this illusion, and everything. And eventually we're going to have to, we're going to pick ourselves up out of the dirt and the muck, and, the alcohol is going to wear off. And now you're looking at a planetary hangover. And as I'm sure you know, dealing with anybody that's hungover is not usually the most pleasant thing to do. Most of us spiritually have been holding the hair collectively of the people who've been vomiting into the universal toilet bowl all this time, with all their crap that, and those people include the Clintons and the Soroses and the Rockefellers and the DuPonts, the Dows, the Warburgs, the Bushes, all of these guys. But what Terrence said is that December 3rd is particularly unique because the final Fibonacci wave helix of this I Ching wave begins to unravel at that point, culminating exactly 13 lunar months later. In other words, 1 lunar year, 13 months of 28 days or 28 and a half days or whatever, that then culminates on December 21st of 2012. And one of the things that Terrence said was that on that date, he said that the novelty spikes and waves that make up all the events in history, going all the way back to the Black Plague and the Muslim Golden Age and First World War, Second World War, French and American Revolutions, all these things all the way back to the fall of the Roman Empire, that they all combine do not match the launching into infinity of what happens after December 21st of 2012. And I said, well, Terrence, what can it be? And he said, the only thing I can think of is that man learns how to travel through time. And the way we do that is that if the veil gets lifted on the right-hand side of the brain, then that means that we have access to our past lives. We begin to understand that we are, in fact, immortal and eternal. We begin to understand that at some point, and we come together, that the Mayan core synthesis that is one of the great contributions of Dr. Kalaman, of all is one, life has purpose, God is love, finally comes to fruition. That eventually what you're going to see, Nancy, is that and what's happening now is that we're going to have to come up with some system where one person is not the slave of another, because they didn't do away with slavery. Oh, no. I mean, they basically said, ooh, that's neat. Show us how to do that to everybody. And I go and I talk to, there's a very famous comedian that I just got a chance to hang out with on Tuesday night. I go and I do comedy. I do a comedy set over here in Hermosa Beach. And Salim Mohammed is the guy's name. He was on Last Comic Stand. He's a very famous guy. And one of the few comedians that I know that's an actual real guy that talks about philosophy and theories and whatever else. And we were talking about what we can do to change the world and how we can actually effectuate this. But I talk to black churches all the time about the freedom stuff and whatever else. And look, I'd say to them, look, I don't mean to offend you in any way, shape, or form, and you know and I know that they never really ended slavery. That basically they just said, how do we do it to everybody? And that's what the 14th Amendment is all about. That's what the whole straw man and everything is. So what happens when you generate a system, Miss, I can't call you Naughty Nancy because you're very nice. Miss Nice Nancy. What happens when you generate a system that's based on freedom, based on truth, justice, and the American way? I think that's where everything shifts and everything changes, and we come to that amazing, brave new world. Nancy, thank you so much for being here. Thank everybody for being here. It's an amazing show. Our revels now are ended. These are actors, as I foretold you, are all spirits and are melted into air, into thin air. And like the baseless fabric of this vision, the cloud-capped towers, the gorgeous palaces, the solemn temples, the great globe itself, yea, all which inherit it shall dissolve. And like this insubstantial pageant faded, leave not a rack behind. We are such stuff as dreams are made of, and our little lives are rounded with a sleep. Good night. See you tomorrow night. Thanks for being my friend. It's a strange universe, and we just work here.
No rules. No rules. No taboo topics. No taboo topics. No fear of doom. No fear of doom. We are American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.